Hello, everybody. This is JoAnne Eisen with Reach the Unlimited, and we are back for another week with beautiful Donna Henderson, which I'm so excited to have on because I've been wanting to talk about transitioning as we're all going through transitions in our life all the time, whether it's big or small. And we had the most amazing before the show conversation of really kind of what it's like to go through transitions. And I would like to say thank you so much, Donna, for being here with us and for sharing your wisdom, because this is something that you actually work on and with. And you have a really beautiful resume behind you of things that you do and have learned and trained in and are. Can you share with everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I am an intuitive soul guide and mentor. And I primarily work with clients when they are navigating times of transition and basically change. And I help them to connect with who they are on a soul level, using the Akashic Records primarily, along with a wide variety of different types of energy modalities, energy clearings, that kind of thing. And that really helps to facilitate an easier journey through the time of transition. And I find that, generally speaking, there are transition basically falls into three buckets.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is around relationships. So that can be divorce, or it can be friendships ending, or any kind of relationship change. And then the second type is around careers. So it could be loss of a job or changing your career yourself. And then the third one is health. So those are kind of the three major buckets that we tend to experience times of transition in. And the key is, I have found, connecting with who you are as a soul, and letting your soul lead you through that time is really one of the most helpful things that you can do.
So, hi, everybody that's here. What I would like to say is we hear that a lot about connecting back to your soul. And because we know that we're human and we are born as a human, but we are a soul.
Correct.
How does somebody connect with their soul to be kind of connected in that and understand that's what I need to do to move forward?
So there's lots of ways, and I think everybody's journey is unique in how they connect with who they are as a soul. So I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer. All I can speak to is how, what my own journey was like and what I've seen with my clients. I've been on a spiritual journey for 25 years now, and I just kept listening to my inner voice, that wisdom, because our soul speaks very quietly. So that's why they say, you should meditate in order to connect with who you are as a soul. I will admit, I'm not the best meditator. But I do find times of introspection, and I do other things that are quiet. Like I'll do I'll do coloring, which sounds funny, but like anything where you're just in a meditative state and you're letting your mind wander, it allows that small inner voice to speak to you. If you're listening, if you're getting caught up in your day-to-day, then you won't. So it's listening to that inner voice within and following your hunches, your gut, whatever you want to call it. That's the first and easiest way, and the typical way that people start. And then there's lots of modalities after that you can, if you choose, you can start to take, courses or read books or whatever might be.
Yeah. So we're talking today about transitions, and we're all going to go through many transitions in our lifetime. And as you all know, and we all said hello to you last week as I vented about my transition, some of them are easier than other transitions, but we're going to face them all of our lives. Do you have any ideas or tools about, because it doesn't matter whether it's big or small, as we're starting to go through that change, we can feel like we were talking about, you can feel fear, you can feel uncertain, or you can feel like, why is this happening to me? Anger or whatever. There's so many, depending on the transition that you're going through, we can have so many different emotions. Is there any way when we're starting to go through a transition that there's something we can do to help us process through it maybe?
So a couple of things are coming to mind. So first of all, it's understanding the process of transition, because the process of transition is the same for everybody on a big picture level. So it starts with the initial sudden change. So if it's a divorce, it's, your partner tells you they want a divorce. Or if it's a job loss, you find out you're laid off. It's the initial thing that happens. Or sometimes it's internally driven as well. Like you decide you're making a change in your partnership or your job or whatever it might be. So that's the first thing. And then you kind of tend to go down this spiral, like a downward spiral of emotions that go all over the place. There can be relief, there can be anger, there can be grief, there can be disbelief, whatever. It's like runs the gamut. But it's having the awareness all the way along that this is what's happening. And so you're kind of spiraling downwards. I hate to put it that way, but it sort of is. And it's not linear. You might kind of progress forward and then go back to anger and whatever. And then you land at the bottom in what's called the liminal space. And the liminal space is that time of in between. And this all takes, time, obviously. But the whole process, everybody goes through it in this way, in not the exact same way, but the whole process happens for everybody. So the liminal space is that in between. You're not where you were, but you haven't gone to where you're going. You haven't, found that new job or discovered who you are as a person without your partner or whatever it might be. You're not there yet. You're in the in-between. And that is kind of a messy time, and it's an uncomfortable time. And it can be depressing. It can be numb. You could be numbing yourself. There can be fear because you don't know what's going to happen. There's lots of things. And that's the time where I work with my clients, that it's the liminal space, because that's the most challenging.
It is.
And yes. And the key, so this is where I'm going to partly answer your question, and that is feeling the feelings, which no one likes to do, or most people don't. Feeling the feelings and and clearing them. So, emotions are energy in motion. We know that. And so they're just energy, just looking at them as energy. As human beings, we categorize them as positive and negative.
Yes.
But they're not. They're high frequency, low frequency energy. That's it. But the negative don't feel good. So we call them negative, right? So feeling them, and it's usually quote unquote negative feelings during this time, and allowing them to move through our body and releasing them. And so that's nice. How do you do that? Exactly. How? So one of the ways I do it with my clients is I do energy clearings, and I'm trained to do that. However, in addition to that, there's lots of ways that you can clear some energy yourself. And I mentioned meditation before, so that's certainly one of them. Moving your body is a really, really good one.
Big, yes.
That helps to move the emotions through your body when you move your physical body, because otherwise they can get stuck. So that can be exercise, whatever form of exercise you enjoy. If you like to go to the gym, or if you like to go for walks in nature, nature is a wonderful healer. Another thing that I just did a little while ago today, actually, is I stood in my office and I literally, standing up, just shook my whole body, like every single part of me, just to energy release, So that's another thing you can do. So moving your body is a really good one. Water.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Water.
Yeah. So, whether it's an Epsom salt bath, or if you're in the shower, you can visualize. If you're a visual person, you can visualize the emotions, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the whatever, going down the drain. I find that really helpful.
One of the things I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I kind of am, because it's
Sure.
something that intrigues me quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
is to say that something is energy. We all know that this is energy. It's just
Sure.
in a different form. It's energy.
Right. Yeah.
And when we have positive energy and negative energy, we don't really want to label it, right? We don't want to label like this is a really shitty time of this experience and this is a really exuberating time of an experience, because those are
Mm-hmm.
degrees.
Yeah.
But you do go through those emotions. They're
Mm-hmm.
real when you're just like, as a lot of people know from my experience, that there were times where I was like paralyzed with what
Yeah.
am I going to do and where am I going to go? And
Right.
I feel like that's something to really honor yourself in as well, because like you said, we go through the swings of it. Some moments I would feel like, oh yeah, I'm totally into this. And other times you're like, hell, I don't even know how I'm going to get out of this,
Right.
because I understand and we can speak that this is energy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to our real feelings and our real experiences,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's ways that we need to kind of accept it, that this is just an experience, but yet have self-love that we are, you know what I mean? It's like we have to really be patient with ourselves, which I didn't do as
Right.
I was going through my journey. I was really hard on myself. Like, okay, this is I'm right at this time period where I have to make it or break it. I have to move
Yeah.
forward, and I would push and push and push until, like I had said last week, I got to this point where it's like I was tired of pushing. It was like I can't just keep pushing. I have to stop and be able to experience and acknowledge what I was actually feeling. And I don't think that people give themselves permission to do that. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, and that's why I started off by saying feel the feelings, which we
Yeah.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
We're typically, I mean, everybody's different, but typically not taught to feel our,
Mm-hmm.
less comfortable feelings, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
call them that.
Yeah.
And not only not taught to feel them, often we're taught to, dismiss them, push them down. We're told as children, if we're, having a temper tantrum and angry, be quiet. No one wants to hear you when you're yelling. That's, and I'm not beating up on the parents out there, because I'm one, and I'm sure I've said that. So, and
In
we're all
love.
human. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And
Yeah.
there's certain realities of,
Yeah.
if you're at the store and your kid is screaming, you might say, stop it.
Stop it, or
or yeah. So that being said, we're human as parents, so that's going to happen. But we are taught that often as children to stuff the emotions down, the quote unquote negative emotions. So it's learning how, and it's not just learning how, it's realizing in the first place that that's what we're doing, because sometimes we're so disconnected from those emotions that we don't even know what we're feeling. Like if someone was to say to you, like, are you angry? If you're a person who has completely repressed anger, you'd be like, no, I don't feel angry about it. So, and I've had that experience myself. So that's why I'm using that example is, I have probably my whole life been really disconnected from anger. And for me, how it has shown up in the last few years, because it really has, is through my body. My body has actually done these really interesting, given me messages and done these interesting things. And so that's where listening to, what I call your soul, but which is also connected to your body, and the ways in which spirit communicates. Spirit communicates to me through my body. I know this. So for somebody else, it might be something else. Spirit might send them messages through billboards or songs, or there's all kinds of ways. So, so we get those messages. So learning to walk through life with that observer mind and pay attention, which, we don't every moment of the day because we're living our lives, but trying to, and then heeding those messages. And I feel like sometimes you have to be a little bit of a private detective, a little bit of Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys or whatever, if I'm not aging myself. and to figure out the message that's trying to be communicated. So,
Well, I feel like sometimes, like I mean, we're in tune with our bodies, but we ignore it, I think. I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes we don't realize that we're not listening. We don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that we've become numb to what is really best for us
Mm-hmm.
because we're so saturated in the actual issue of getting through. I mean, we're talking bigger things. This isn't like, should I go to the store or not? This is like
Yeah,
a
of
big life
course.
change.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something that I think we talk a lot about doing that in our everyday lives. But when you're going through something really big, you forget
Mm-hmm.
that you need to have these kind of things in action or in play to have
Mm-hmm.
self-love, because we can forget that we need to have that self-love. I also, from your experience, I think this is really more important. Is there certain personality types that tend to do it more than others when it comes to forgetting to take that time to listen and self-love?
Um, it's hard to say, actually. I don't think I could say that there's a certain personality type
Mhm,
that's, um, better or not as good at the
mhm,
self-love thing. I do think this is a generalization, of
mhm,
course, but I do think that women in
mhm.
general,
Yeah.
are taught to focus on out here and
Mhm,
make everyone else okay and
mhm,
not look here
mhm.
within,
Right.
and turn that self-care and self-love and self-compassion like onto self. And so often we have to learn how to do that and how to accept, um, how to allow that
Mhm.
love and care and acceptance in. um, the I've recently started using this analogy, and I got it from someone else, and I don't remember who, so I can't give them credit, but it wasn't me. um, we've all heard the analogy of filling your cup, right? Like,
Right.
filling your cup, make sure your cup's filled so you have enough to, give to others. But the analogy is that it's a teacup, and the teacup obviously has a saucer. And
Mhm,
so not only are you filling your cup, but you're filling it to overflowing so
mhm.
that it lands all in the saucer, so that when you're giving to others, they're taking from the saucer and you always have a full cup.
Wow, that's a really good analogy.
I'm very visual, so I need that. I need that kind of memory stuff, visual stuff. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting because it's like a deer in headlights sometimes. And I know that we need to listen and we need to do all these things. But like for me, I had some friends that would shake me up, like, wake up. You need to focus on the things you need to focus on.
Hmm.
Not we don't always have them, and a lot of times it's usually midnight. Or sometimes
Yeah.
it's like dark and you're thinking and you're not sleeping and your brain is going crazy. Do you
Yeah.
have any kind of tips in those particular moments where you need more of a shock treatment to bring yourself out of this crazy thinking that you're in?
Um, that's that's where I usually recommend what I call back to basics, and
Mhm,
back to basics, uh, is, I can't think of the word, but it's encapsulated by the four bodies. So
mhm,
we have our four bodies, right? We have our physical body, our mental, our emotional, and our energetic body, which we don't typically know much about.
mhm,
And so in that moment when you're lying in bed and it's midnight, and
mhm.
it's too late to call a friend, or you're not even wanting to because you're in such a dark place.
Exactly, yeah, mhm,
Because when we're in that dark place, we tend not to reach out. Most people
mhm,
don't,
mhm,
rightly or wrongly, but that's how it is.
mhm.
And your thoughts are spinning. That's when it's a time where you can do something physical with your body, because even though that seems unrelated,
Mhm.
it really will help, because continuing to ruminate and think about whatever the thought pattern is that you're thinking, it keeps you stuck.
Yes, it does.
So sometimes we just need to, like, to snap out of it. We
Mhm,
just need to get the emotion. We don't need to sit there stewing in it. And it sounds like it's bypassing, but it's not.
mhm.
It physically moves it out of our body. We can also do something like screaming. Like, it doesn't have to be exercise. You don't have to go for a jog at midnight. If you're somewhere like in your house where it's not going to upset anybody that you scream, scream, or scream into a pillow,
Mhm,
or punch the pillow really hard, like, just to get. And even if you don't feel angry, that doesn't. It's not about being angry. It's just
mhm.
about moving and getting everything that's stuck
Right, the
out.
shift of the energy.
It
Also,
shifts it.
the shifting of that energy, that moving and doing something else will get your mind off of that kind of obsessive thought pattern. So
Yeah.
it'll shift that, which
Yeah.
is really important.
Yes. Yes. And when we have repetitive thought patterns, I used to work with a coach, and what she would recommend is have, and some people like this as a tool, and some people don't, but I'll just throw it out there, to have an elastic on your wrist.
Oh,
And so if there's a repetitive thought that's like, if you do a lot of beating yourself up in your head, or if you're doing a lot of ruminating, or um, whatever it might be, if you have an elastic on your wrist, it's a bit loose, not too tight, and you snap it every time you have that thought that you're trying to change, because you're changing the neural networks.
right.
And you're not snapping it super hard to be
Yep.
painful, but enough to kind of shift the trajectory of the thought pattern.
One of the things that I would do is to kind of ground myself is to come to something that's outside of myself and listen to it, like
Mm-hmm.
a bird singing or people talking or
Mm-hmm.
something that's bringing me back to the everyday life, showing me that life continues. It's not just about that moment or the
Right.
situation I'm in, but that there's life beyond me
Yes.
and that life continues, and it's never going to be the same way. It's always going to be changing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not always bad. It changes from good to bad to good to bad. I think we go through that through our entire life. We
Oh
always have
yeah.
flux.
Yeah, absolutely. We go through small changes and transitions. We go through big ones, like the ones I've talked about. And grounding yourself is really important. And a lot of us have heard of the five senses technique, like you talked about listening to a bird or whatever. So the
Mhm,
five
mhm.
senses is one of the best ways to ground yourself back into your body, because when we're spinning in our thoughts, we're out of our body. We're actually
Yeah,
not in our body. So
right.
bringing yourself back into your body, which is grounding, and finding, using your five senses to find those things that you can um, pay attention to, like what you can smell and hear and touch and feel and all that, is really helpful. But I have found that there's a time and place for that, because if someone is in a really heightened state from a central nervous system standpoint,
Mhm.
they're too far gone. They can't go there. It won't work. So you have to know yourself well enough as to when you're starting to get to that state, but you're not there yet. And that's when you ground. And it can even be as simple as just like putting your hands under cold water. Like, you don't have to
Oh,
have
yeah.
any kind of a thought. You just go and put your hands under the water, um, and that really helps for sure.
So you said something which I'm not going to go down this subject, but I'm going to come to it and then leave it really fast because this isn't the place. But I've noticed that there's more and more people committing suicide. And that's that point where you're just going deeper and deeper into your own thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
become hopeless. Um, none of us have the answer to that. And none of us can have the answer to that because
Mm-hmm.
it varies person to person. But what are some of the things when you get to, because you said this will only work when you're in this middle kind of section of that kind of deep thinking. When you're
Mm-hmm.
going that deep into the whatever the story around whatever it is that you're going through, because usually it's our own story. We've created I've done, you can't even imagine the stories that I've created through this
Well, we've all
experience.
done that. Yes.
Exactly. But you
Yes.
get to that point where the stories can't be untold. Do
Mm-hmm.
you have any tips on how people can maybe do something to come out? Because it's almost like a dog that sees red and it's just going to attach, right? Are there some tips that you can give people that could bring them out of that kind of despair, that kind of, I know that's a lot for you, and I'm sorry if that is.
Well,
It's just made me think about, people
yeah.
that get to that point, and it seems to be more prevalent today more than ever.
Yes, for lots of reasons. And
Mhm.
I'm not a mental health professional.
Exactly.
And even when I work with people in the area of transition in a health, from a health
Mhm.
perspective, I keep it focused to physical health,
Right.
like the physical body, because that's where my
Mhm.
knowledge base is. And so I don't purport to be a mental health professional, but I if someone is in that state of um, depression,
Mhm.
suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, which is happening with a lot of our young people
It
nowadays
is.
for lots of reasons, then I think they need to seek, obviously, seek professional help. One modality that I don't do, I'm not trained in it, but I have witnessed great success is EMDR.
Yes, that's been known to be very successful.
Yeah, and again, it's using the physical body. Our physical
Mhm.
body is
Mhm.
just a miracle, and we don't realize or use it to the full extent, I think. But
Right.
it does use the rapid eye movement to release trauma, and it's not about talking it all over and over and over again. It's about just use the body to release the trauma. And I'm not saying that would work for everybody, but that's something that comes to my mind that has been beneficial.
Well, I thank you for saying that. I know I put you on the spot there, but it just came to me like it's because I just talked to somebody else who they are experiencing this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very real. And I feel
Of
like
course.
because we get into our heads, and from what I went through, I can really see how that happens. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the tools to be able to on your own get through it or be able to talk yourself out of it, it can
Mm-hmm.
be really damaging and real. And when you were saying that, it's almost like finding a way, from my understanding, well, I've actually done it. It actually works. If two dogs are fighting, you just go and pick up one of the dog's hind legs and it stops
Mm.
them. It just shuts down those neuro waves that are saying, no, I got to kill whatever is in front of me.
Right.
And I feel like what you said is really important because I know that has been very successful. Um, but I really like what you said too about don't stew in it yourself. Don't stay in it for when you know that you're starting to get to that period of time or you're
Mm-hmm.
assessing to that point about it, is to talk to someone like you, talk to a professional, someone in mental health, talk to somebody, because my belief is it's not just one thing, it's many things. It's mind, body, and spirit. And when you can work on all of them, then you're going to bring
Yes.
yourself back into homeostasis and bring that all back into balance. But I guess why I touched on it, and I don't want to stay on it very long, is that there's hope there still, and to always remember that there's hope, and to be able to reach somebody who can help you with that.
Yeah, I 100% believe that there's always hope, there's always a solution. And even though like everybody is unique, that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's fascinating. Everybody's
Yeah.
solution is going to be unique. And
Right.
so if you yourself don't have the desire, motivation, wherewithal
Right.
to get yourself there, when I say there, I mean to that place of turning yourself around, then that's where um, you find someone who can walk alongside you, hold
Mm-hmm.
space for you, is trained, has the tools. And usually it's a team because, again, because we have, our four bodies. Like you said, it's not typically any one thing that's going on. Everything is connected. So I work in the energetic realm. That's
Mm-hmm.
where my training is. That's where my strengths lie. That's where my gifts are in terms of clearing energy. And so that's the area that
Mm-hmm.
I operate from, because things that happen in the energetic realm can cause physical health issues, can
Yeah.
cause
Mm-hmm.
emotional health issues, can
Yeah.
cause mental health issues. So we need it all, basically. And there's a lot we can do ourselves, and then oftentimes we need outside help too. Not all the
So,
time, but
yeah, well, I don't know. For me, I need help all the time, but that's a whole
actually me too. Yeah.
ask
I have a
about.
team.
Yeah, my spiritual team and my friend team will all tell you that I have problems all the time. So we went to that end of the spectrum. Now let's go back to the other end of the spectrum. So there's a lot of people too, though, that internalize, but they don't show it. Like they're walking around with, I'm dealing with this fine. Everything is fine. And they're not. You know that it's difficult for them. What would a friend do to be able to help them? Or what would you tell a friend to help someone who's going through that and not really facing it? They're in pain. How do you help them through that pain?
Hmm. That's a good question. The first thing that's coming to me is witness it, because a lot of times, like if you're a friend and you know that this person is saying, "Oh, I'm fine, it's all good," and you
Yeah.
know they're not,
Yes.
because you know them well enough.
Mhm.
sometimes it's the smallest thing, like that person being seen and heard and witnessed and acknowledged, that's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, because as soon as that happens, they're dissolving in tears, and that's the breakthrough. But they would have held it all in and stiff upper lip and I'm fine. And if you would ask them, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. But if you don't ask, you just simply say, I'm noticing this. Or how about if I'm just going to go and send you whatever, flowers, or you don't tell them, you just do it, or whatever. You take some action. It's sometimes enough to snap them out of it.
You know, you said something that triggered me, because I've had this happen a couple of times, where I have a friend who, whenever I talk to her, she's like, I got all the answers for you. No, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or act that, whatever. You know, it's like because the thing you said was to be seen and heard. Like, I think for us, that's the hardest thing to do, is just sit and not speak anything. And so it's that part of just listening. Just being a listener, if you are a friend of someone who's going through that. And I've done that, where I've had friends that were going through hard times. And there was a period in my life where I felt like I had to fix everybody, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you realize that's not what somebody needs. What they need is the only thing you have to do is, without judgment, have an open ear. That's it. And listen.
That's what holding space is. You're just, you're sitting there with them, you're listening, you're witnessing, you're acknowledging, you're sending them love. That's it. As human beings, though, we don't like to see our friends, family members, loved ones in pain. Who likes that? Nobody likes that. We want to fix it. We want to make it all better.
Exactly.
So that's why we do that. It's from the best place. It's understandable. But if we can understand ourselves that that's not in their highest good necessarily, then that kind of allows us to take ourselves off the hook and say, okay, well, it's not, I'm doing it for me to make sometimes we do it from ourselves to make ourselves feel better, because if we can make them feel better, then we feel better. And, even though we have the best of intentions.
I was reading what Pierrette said. Something I was going to say to that, and then I saw her message. Oh, shoot. It'll come back to me.
Okay. If it's meant to, it will.
Yeah. No, I remember what it is now. So it's interesting that we're talking about transitions in human life. We all have them. We're all going to go through them over and over and over again. But we're, as a country, are going through transitions. Do you have any suggestions for people to cope with what we're dealing with in our world right now?
Yeah. Well, like I said at the beginning, I think collectively as humanity, we're going through transition on a global scale, like the rising, the ascension of consciousness. And then kind of in the middle, countries are going through times of transition. Like if we look at all the transition that's happening within different countries around the world, and then individually we are, because we really are all one. So it's all reflecting and mirroring what's happening everywhere. In terms of tips or whatever to sort of navigate the change that we're living through, for me, and this, I'm just going to say what helps me is I trust. I 100% trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to, and it's the most exciting time to be alive. And our soul chose to be here because we are more than capable, first of all, and secondly, we have such gifts to give back. And even if we don't know what those gifts are literally, because our soul chose to be here, the frequency that we hold is the gift that we give.
Yeah.
So when I get caught up, which as human beings we all do, when I get caught up in the the whatever is going on in, in the country or the politics or the whatever, which is serious and important stuff.
Yeah.
I remind myself that it is all unfolding as it's meant to, and there is a grand plan, divine design, whatever. But that's my personal belief.
Mm-hmm.
And I also tend to not watch the news
because
that just
important.
That just lowers my frequency, and I get really angry.
Oh yeah, I get you.
So
it's kind of hard to avoid it all, though. You still get whiffs and hearings of whatever somebody stupid person is doing.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think the thing that I learned a long time ago is either you believe or you don't believe, really. Yeah. And if you believe that we are souls and we're here to have a human experience, then you have to believe that all of this is happening for a reason, and that there will be an end result. And in the very, very end, it's all going to be good because we'll all be back home with each other laughing about this.
Right. Exactly.
Whole experience that we're going through in this nightmare right now.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I talk to my friends about, when we go home, we'll be laughing about this in the great cafe in the sky. And I have another friends go, I don't think we're going to do that. I'm like, well, I'm going to be. Period. That is a really interesting story that she said, and I want everybody to understand what she said or read it, because she said that she's worked with the Red Cross and she's dealt with 13. That is a high number of suicidal people, and one was her husband. And her comment was, just listening and being heard is what's the most important for people like that. And I think that it's not just for any degree of any kind of transition or stress. It's for each other all the time.
Yeah.
It's even in the good times that, we can turn each other off because we're off doing our grocery list, or we're off, thinking about what we're going to have to do tomorrow or whatever.
Right.
Or my words are more important than your words. It's like we just forgot how to listen to each other.
Yeah. Just being witnessed is, I find, the number one thing that people need.
So when you're working with people, what do you find is the most common reason that people get into a funk or into a problem, or can't get out? Let's put it a different way. Can't get out of something that they're trying to get out of.
Like what brought them to, like what kind of change they experienced, you mean? Or
no,
why they can't get out of it, you mean?
Why they can't, why we get stuck and we don't, because we all can actually, I mean, if you talk to anybody and you ask them, but did you know to do that? And they'd be, okay, I thought about it. Yet they don't do it.
Yes.
What do you think is the common reason that people wouldn't act with what is in their best interest?
The most common, I would say, is fear. So, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but, going back to the model of transitions, when we're in that liminal space, and the next phase is to go into a place of creation and creating, whether it's, creating the new life you're going to have without your spouse, or creating the new job, or you're moving across the country or whatever. It's a place of creation. And there's that, like I said before, the fear of the unknown. And even if it's an exciting thing, we're excited about it, we're joyful about it. It's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. It's like, I don't know what that's going to be like, and am I going to be okay? And it's more comfortable, even if it was, let's say, a horrible marriage. It was, at least it's what you knew, and you don't know how you're going to be. I mean, I've been through divorce, so that was what it was like for me. I didn't know what my life was going to look like without the partner. However, what kept me going, for me personally, was I had 2 very small children, and so not an option. I didn't have an option to sit there and wallow for too long, because I needed to create the new life that we were going to have as a family, right? So, but everybody's different. But I would say fear is the number one. And it depends on what someone's relationship is with change. I personally really love it. I'm one of those weird people. Even when it's something bad, that quote unquote bad, that happens. I've experienced job loss. I've had a lifelong chronic illness. I've had divorce. I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's my almost lifelong chronic illness that taught me to trust and have faith and resilience and hope and know that everything is always just fine. So that's been the gift in, my lifelong health issues. It's been a gift for me. So that's the personal part that I bring to the work that I do, and then the training that I've done in the energy clearings and all of that stuff. So I sometimes have that fear. It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has fears, of course,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
But that's the number one. Back to your question.
I like what you said, because I feel like this is the common thing. And I know I did it for many years, is you get complacent where you're at. It's comfortable. You know it. You're familiar with it. You know what to expect. That keeps you in a situation where you're not having to challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And which isn't always good, right? Whenever
Mm-hmm.
we're complacent, that's when you need to start worrying, because you're not learning. But, you can be in a bad situation because you're complacent with it, because you're comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good reason to stay in something. And I know for many years I did that in my marriage,
Mm-hmm.
where I knew it was a bad marriage. I knew it wasn't where I needed to stay. And then I went to phase 2, where I was even more comfortable in complacent.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have learned that is my biggest key to this is not good. Because when you're not challenging yourself or trying to find, like right now, it's like, how can I challenge myself? I mean, everybody knows me. It's like, I have a thought, let's go do it. I don't want to stay stagnant anymore. But there was a long time when I did. So that I feel like is a really important key. If you find yourself not really creating or moving forward or creating something new in your life, or you're just complacent and you're not happy or unhappy, it's time to really question.
Absolutely. It's the recognizing when you're in it, because when you're complacent, you're not really thinking about, like, you're not. So that's the whole point of being complacent. So, I kind of had that when I was still in the corporate world. And while I was, I worked in the corporate world for 25 years, and a lot of that time, at least the second half of it, I was taking all my spiritual courses and doing all that stuff on the side, in the closet, not fully, but, and for the last couple of years in my final corporate job, which was over 11 years ago now, the thing that would go over and over in my head was, I enjoyed my job. It was fine. I loved the people I worked with. I had made a good salary, but I had lost that love and feeling, from the song. I lost that love and feeling. Yeah. I was like, I do not care one iota about what I'm doing. I was like, it's fine. And I kept repeating that in my head. And then finally the universe said, okay. And I was laid off. The universe does that.
Yeah, I understand when the universe goes, oh, you're not going to see all the signs that I gave you for the last 10 years. So how about if I just knock you on the side of the head and say, okay, now it's time for you to change and go this way.
Right. And I was okay with it, actually, because, I quite like change, but I probably wouldn't have, I would have done it on my own, but it would have taken a long time. I was being very slow.
I'm just going to say it right now. I loved where I was at. I have no desire to ever get remarried again, ever. I'm not saying don't everybody send me all the stuff you always send me when I say that. Don't do it. I just have no plan on it. But anyway, I had no desire to change my life. I was happy where I was at. Everything was fine. Was it perfect? No. Could I have done better? Absolutely. Was I happy? Not really. Did I have a chain around my ankles? Absolutely. But I was fine. And I would have stayed there because I was comfortable. And it took my ex to say, I need to do something different. And that was like, oh,
yeah,
we have to change this little game we're playing here. And I don't mean to belittle that, or, it wasn't that simple.
No, I know.
In essence, that was what it was. I was very comfortable. And and I had so many people saying, you need to make this change. You're in limbo right now. You need to make the change for years.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't pushed to do it until I was,
Yeah. Oh, I totally relate to that story too. Situation is obviously different, but the end of my marriage was a similar thing. I was like, well, I'm not overly happy, but it's fine. And I wanted the life that we had created, I wanted it to continue generally, like overall, and our kids were little and whatever. So I just felt like that's how it needed to be for now.
Right.
But another analogy I'm going to throw at you, and this one I will give credit to my mother for this one, and she may be watching. And that is she used to work in career transition, actually, interestingly.
Oh, wow.
But she uses the analogy of a trapeze. So, you're on the trapeze and you're swinging back and forth, and there's a net below you if you think of trapeze artists, and you're swinging. At some point, you have to let go and reach and grab for the other one. And that's when you're letting go of the fear and trusting that the other, trapeze thingy is going to be at the right place when you're at the right place. And if for some reason you're not and you miss it, the universe is still going to catch you down below. It's okay. And then you can climb back up. But that's, I love that. I love that visual.
So
too.
I always, when there's an exclamation point, I have to point it out. This is it, you guys. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Because that's really the best analogy to what we're doing in our life when we're being complacent and we're not really wanting to take a chance and live our life because we're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Comfortable is not good. And you're right. It's that letting go that is the part that really holds us to something. So that's a great analogy. That is absolutely perfect. And Sharon, I'm with you, not married or living with anybody. I'm with you on both of those. No, don't start your stuff. Don't do it, but no. And also Sharon, I hope you're back by Saturday. She's out on her motorcycle, traveling, camping. She camps on her motorcycle.
Oh, fun.
Anyway, hence I digress. Anyway, yeah, I really love that because I know that I've heard that analogy before, and I've used that a lot because I don't like change. I like everything to stay the same. I need to have everything consistent. It's just who I am. I'm getting better at change because I'm forcing that to happen. I'm putting myself out there. Actually, I'm finding out that it's not that I like it, but I'm learning that I'm stronger than I think I am. And so I feel like it's been a good lesson for me to keep pushing myself. And one of the things I tell people a lot is when I know that I'm being reacted by something, then I'll make myself do it until I stop the reaction. I'm going to find ways to keep challenging myself to not be reacting in that way because I know it's a false fear. It's not really something that's true. And there's nothing around me that would be based on me having that fear. So it's something I challenge myself on.
Yeah, well, our subconscious mind it wants to keep us safe. That's its job, and safe being comfortable, complacent, not feeling negative feelings, and so that's it. And so when you're doing all those things, your subconscious mind is doing its job, and that's fine. But having the awareness that that's what's happening, and then telling your subconscious mind, and you can do this literally talking to it as if it's a separate entity from you, even though it's not, but telling it or journaling or whatever and saying, thank you very much. I appreciate your concern. You can go sit over there on the chair. I'm fine. I've got this. Thank you. Exactly. And then move forward in whatever it is that you're doing. I was just going to mention before when you're talking about yourself with change and whatever, I find that there's 3 types of people in terms of how people, the relationship that people have with change. So there's either people who hate change and avoid it at all costs, and then when it happens, because life is life, it's a huge traumatic, stressful, anxiety producing, whatever it might be, event for them. So there's that category. And then there's people who seek it out, are constantly throwing the balls up in the air to see where they land, making changes with their life, moving across the country. They love it. They thrive on it. They're pretty rare, but there are those people. And then there's people that are more in the middle, and that's like me. When it happens, sometimes I'll seek it out, but mostly it happens. And when it happens, I see it, and people in this category see it as an opportunity for evolution and growth. And they like to be kind of like masters of their own reinvention. They see it as a way to reinvent. So there might be that initial like, what's going on? And then, oh, this is exciting. So it's a quick shift.
I love that. The opportunity to create and invent.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's like your masterpiece of another time of your life. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. My brain went in 5 different directions right now.
Like, too many tabs.
I was.
Too many tabs open in the brain.
You're not kidding. It was something, oh shoot. It has to do with challenging, because I feel like that's one of the things most people don't like to do is challenge themselves. Like public speaking, that's a big one. You can't believe how many people I've asked to be on the show, and they're like, no, I can't do that. No, because it's public speaking. You're actually publicly giving your opinion. And I used to not be able to do that. And then now people can't shut me up. But but I think that if you can find ways to challenge yourself to come out of your comfort zone, that really is important in our development and our growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fine line, though, because it's not about forcing yourself to do something you really hate. It's knowing yourself well enough to know, okay, I don't like public speaking. I'm not going to, I don't know, go on like a big stage or do a TED talk or whatever. Like just to start baby steps, do a little Facebook Live, or I hate doing Facebook Lives. But I'm just saying, just do these little things.
Talk to you about that. I got that one covered.
Well, again, it's I never used to like to do this sort of thing, but I've done quite a bit of it over the last few years, and now it's doesn't bother me. So it's the baby steps in whatever it is that you're trying to like grow. It's growing your comfort zone. It's not like busting out of it all at once.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm going to go on the news, I'm aging myself, the 6:00 news or something like TED Talk or whatever.
I'm with you, yes.
but if you don't start doing it, and like what you said is really common. I don't like doing Facebook Lives, but why? Because when you do a Facebook Live in general, you're only talking to your friends. And yet we would all get on the phone and talk to each other in one phone call, right? It's not a big deal. But because for some reason you're on video and you're doing it on a public forum that anybody can theoretically see. But I feel like it goes more back into self-worth than anything else, because we don't want to look bad, or we don't want to look stupid, or we don't a lot of in the beginning, it's like, who's going to want to hear what I have to say? And when I first started, I kind of fumbled, like, it's so funny. We have a mutual friend.
Yes, I know.
she worked with me too. And, a lot of people were like, well, you have to do it this way. And you have to, and I've talked about this before. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way. But I had to do it in a way that I could grow in my own way and figure out my own way. And like, use a prompter and have lines and have a whole speech thing and have all this all set. I don't work that way. And so it took me a long time to realize that I have a lot to say. And as you could tell the last Thursday, I can go on and on and on, but it didn't happen overnight. It was something that, because I was nervous, and I also had a really bad childhood when it came to my education and reading, and everything was just really negative. And so I really came out with it thinking, well, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And I know a lot of people really don't want to hear what I have to say, but y'all come and listen. So there you go. But it was a process of learning for me. And I have a guy who was working with me on a video, and he said, I very rarely see someone do a whole video and there's no breaks in it, and I don't have to go back and cut and paste. And he said, I was like my mouth to the ground that you had that whole video and you didn't take a breath, which didn't come, at once. It came from me
Mm-hmm.
just more and more. So exactly what you said is true. When you can do it in small ways, because the fear is only, as you know, and you work with people, it's in your mind, it's not reality.
Yeah.
And you have to take those small steps, because when you can challenge yourself in areas that really are fearful to you or make you shiver
Mm-hmm.
or run the other way,
Yeah.
it helps you to prove to yourself. And it's not about always speaking, right? It could be about traveling around the world by yourself, or driving from one part of the country to the other side by yourself. I mean, there's so many things. Those are big things. I don't know how I feel about it either,
Yeah.
it's that fear of what we don't know, like we've been talking about. But it's also challenging yourself to get to know who you are, because if you don't know, then how do you grow?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're reminding me of, this is one aspect of the Akashic Records that I actually access, which is what the main life lessons are that your soul
Mhm.
chose to experience in this lifetime. And our soul chooses one or more lessons. And it can, so for example, mine is invisibility.
Mhm.
So mine, and how that shows up is I'm more comfortable not being visible. In other words, not like this. I'm more comfortable being invisible. I'm more, however, when I'm not seen, that triggers me.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a
Interesting.
weird double-edged
I get it.
sword.
Mhm.
But at the root of it is a sense of depleted self-worth, not being worthy of being
Exactly.
seen. And so that's what that whole life lesson is
Mhm.
all about. And when I learned that from my own Akashic Records, it was, I was able to use that information so that
Mhm.
as I kind of go along in my life, I know that that's, first of all, it's what my soul chose to experience
Mhm.
in this incarnation, and it's part of my human growth, and it's also part
Yeah.
of my soul's growth, and so it's
Mhm.
all perfect. And so every time that lesson shows up, my soul is rejoicing, saying, yay, another layer of healing. uh,
Yeah.
but the human part of me is not rejoicing, but that's okay. But now that I have that awareness, so
Yeah.
that's another piece that helps me on my, on my human journey as I go along. And we all have certain lessons that our souls chose, for sure.
I think that being invisible is a pretty common one, at least for women, more so than men. I know
Mm-hmm.
men can too, but we tend to carry it more.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad, because you're right. It does go back to your worthiness, and it is taught. It's something that we've learned very young, uh,
Mm-hmm.
through whatever experiences that we've gone through. It could be many different things. But it takes courage to be able to say, I am worthy, and I am worthy of being heard and seen. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way that you're going to get beyond that is to challenge it.
Right.
And that's hard to do. I'm not saying that it's easy for anybody to do that, but I think for me, it was doing the things that were obvious. It
Mm.
wasn't like I'm going to go start with climbing Mount Everest, although I did want to do that. It's about doing the small things that you can do to
Yeah.
give you that courage to keep going, because I feel like that's a part of all of our souls need, is to be heard and seen,
Mm-hmm.
to not wither like a wilted flower and go inward, but to allow, in whatever way, because we can express that in many different ways,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
allow ourselves to expand and grow and be that soul that we are and experience that gift that we have to bring to the world. But yet so often we want to cover it. I see so many people, and I work with so many people that tend to want to do that, is just kind of cover up. And I was just talking to a gentleman today who has this big dream to be something, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this later. That's my, like, I want to finish that at the end of my life. And I was really thinking about why do you want to wait until the end of your life? I mean, we had a process to go to get there, but why do you want to? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying he does something wrong either, because we all do something like that. But
Right.
why do we want to put something big off to the end when we can experience now what that big dream is, and we have a lifetime to be able to unfold that? But sometimes we need
Yeah.
little steps to get to the big dream too. So there is that part of it.
Yeah. I think It's probably a combination of, I mean, I don't really know the answer, but it's probably a combination of what we're taught and the
Yeah.
experiences that we have as children, and also it's a bit of human nature that we're not as powerful, we're not as big, we're not as expansive
Yeah.
as we truly are.
Right.
And so to step into that can be a bit scary, and then that's where the fear comes in again.
And we all have it.
Sure.
All of
Yeah.
us have it in some way, shape, or form. We don't get away from that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would be, man, we've been all over the gamut on this conversation.
We have
You never
meandered everywhere.
we never know where you're going to go with me.
It's all good.
What would be your words of wisdom, your golden nugget to leave with everybody?
I'm just thinking how to articulate it.
Okay.
I'd say that the main thing is to focus on yourself. And what I mean by that is we're taught, and I said before women primarily, but everybody is taught to look out here for answers. Out here. Everyone else has the answers. Your friends, your family, your politicians, your clergy, your healthcare workers, your educational, whatever. Everyone out there has the answers. They don't have the answers for you. The only person that has the answers for you is you.
Yeah.
And your soul. And so, and as children, we're not taught about the energetics. We're taught about keeping our physical body safe, and we're taught about our emotions, sometimes well, sometimes not well. We're taught about that kind of stuff. We're not taught about the energetic component of our world, and we are that as well. So connecting with that aspect of yourself in whatever way that you do it, and keeping your staying connected to that part of you and listening and treating yourself with love, your physical self, your emotional, your mental, and your energetic, keeping yourself healthy in all the ways, and listening to that, to within, not out there.
Yeah.
Because that's where the answers lie. That's the number one thing that I find I have to reinforce with all of my clients, because they'll look to me for answers, and I don't have them for anybody else but me.
Exactly.
I can hold space for you while you get to them.
That's the key, right?
That's
and
what
I
I'm
want
doing.
to go back to say about this gentleman that I was speaking to. It's not that he's doing something wrong, or I think he's doing something wrong. It was just the way that I perceive things now. I wouldn't have perceived things like that years ago, but now it's like, why do we not do the things now that we have in our heart that we want to do? And I get it that we're all at different time and space, and we're learning, and all of these things all play into it. But I love what you said, because really we're all individually responsible for our own life, and we get to do it in our own way and in our own timing.
Yes.
And that's the important thing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have you mentioned perception, and we all look at life through our own lens, our own life and other people as well, and our world and whatever. And our lens of perception is constantly changing as we continually grow and evolve. And another analogy, I'm big with the analogies tonight. Another analogy that I like to use with my clients when I'm talking about perception is, when you go to the eye doctor and they put that thing in front of your eyes, and they switch out the lenses. Do you see better with this one or this one or this one or this one? And so sometimes when I'm working with a client and I'm trying to shift, not that I'm trying to shift their perception, but I'm just facilitating that they can look at a situation or something going on in their life through a different lens. I use that analogy, what do you think if it could be this? What if you think it could be that? Just to kind of make a subtle shift.
I agree 100%. What a great analogy that is. And you've had really good analogies too, so thank you for them. But that is really true, right? I mean, our past or our history can determine how we're seeing things, doesn't make it right or the only way we can see it. So the more you can shift that view, the more you could think about it in different ways. I think the smarter you are and the better you are in making decisions in your life.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. Having the awareness is, I find, the first step to any kind of transformation that you're trying to make in your life, or maybe you're not trying to make it, but it's kind of happened to you and you're trying to navigate it, and there will be change, there will be transformation. So awareness of yourself and what's happening and your emotions, having the awareness is the first key to that, because if you're disconnected and you don't know, or you're shutting off or whatever, then, which sometimes we need to do for a period of time, and it's not about beating yourself up. If you just need to shut off for a period of time, that's okay too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That is so true. And I think that we do run from change, and because we're afraid of it. We've gone through this a million times, but I want to say one more time is that you have to be open to it, because that's what we're here to experience. Life is never going to stay the same in this world ever.
Right.
No matter how hard you try. I mean, you can try as hard as you want. You're still going to get older. Your kids are going to get older. Your grandkids are going to get older. And all of that's still going to keep going on.
Well, exactly. And it goes back to the fact that we are all energy, and everything is energy, and energy never stays still. It's constantly moving. So when I do energy clearings for a client and they ask how long it's going to last for, I'm like, well, energy is constantly moving, but I recommend whenever we do clearings every whatever, but things are going to be constantly shifting and changing. That's the nature of our world.
Exactly. And I think if we can understand that, because we feel like it's like if you put a seed in the ground, it doesn't stay a seed. It's just going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing until its life expectancy is over. And that's the way we are. That's a change, right? The change of the environment as it's growing, the change of the soil as it's growing, the change, you may change the food that you're feeding that plant from time to time. There's so many changes that happen in our life. There's no way we can stop it. So how do we mitigate it to being something that we can, I don't know, some things we can look at as good and hopeful and happy or whatever. Some things we don't. It's just life.
Yeah, that's true. And it's about not beating ourselves up if we're not looking at it. And, some things don't feel good and some things aren't good. And it's just allowing it to be. I think when we fight change, we're fighting life.
Exactly.
And it just makes it more difficult for ourselves. So
I've been fighting too much of life. I'm done fighting life now. Now I'm just going with the flow. Just whatever happens, I'm going to try really hard to just flow with it.
Yes, just trust and allow. Just allow. It doesn't mean you're not going to take action and do things in your life, but it's you're in the dance.
That's the key. Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good point, because even when life changes, we can't sit still. We have to go with it. We're not going to be able to sit still. Right. But it's the dance. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we're leading, and sometimes the universe is leading. Going back to another analogy now. But that's what's it's an ebb and a flow, and and then we have to be aware when there's times when we might be not in that flow, or we might be fighting things a little bit or whatever, and so just having the awareness that that's what we're doing, not judging ourselves, and then making a shift when the time is right.
Yes, love it. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, and thank you for putting up with me. I know I put you through some hard topics there. You're like, oh my God, I didn't know I was getting into this.
No, I didn't think that at all. And I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed our conversation. And thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
I love this conversation. I hope you guys did. Everybody looked like they were enjoying it. And I'm glad Sharon will be home on Friday. Thank you guys for all being here and sharing in this conversation. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, Donna.
The easiest way is through my website, which is donnahenderson.com. And from there, you can connect with me, sign up for a newsletter, see my services, or just read a little bit about me.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, please take care, challenge yourself, and be safe. Thank you all. And thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.